Guys, we're going to move on to the next one. The prepare. There's a second process of the assessment guide, or an assessment process. As up on in the plan, I already sent the learner an email or a message or a letter to say, listen, come today for a meeting. So I'm going to pretend it's 24 hours at least later on. Here's our help document. I'm going to go over to the real template because it's just got bigger to explain on the page. So there I'm going to meet with the learner. So I say, good morning, John. How are you today? Are you here for the pre-meeting? I'm going to be your assessor. Tell me, it's your first time you're going to be assessed. Shame, you must be nervous. Don't worry, any questions you have, I'm going to explain to you from start to end, and explain every single thing what's happen. And that's how I typically going to meet the learner and greet him, because remember, they're going to be very, very nervous. So I'm going to put him at ease. But at the same time, putting it in a nice way, I'm going to tell him the terms and conditions. So if this learner come with a long story, say for example, today is Thursday and tomorrow is Friday. So he must come back on Friday for his assessment. So I'm just going to let him know in a very nice way, listen here, if you come on Friday and you come unprepared, there are going to be consequences. Either you will have to pay me for a rebooking, or your employer is going to take disciplinary action, because now the training company must pay extra for a reassessment, or there's some consequences going to happen. So I'm just going to make sure we all understand each other in a nice way. Okay, so then I'm going to start with the pre-meeting. Learner detail typically at the top. I just want to go to number one, identify the assessment, the special needs. Now, what is special needs? People always say it's disability and stuff. No, it's not always disability. Special needs always starts with, I had a problem. I had a problem because I was feeling sick, or I had a problem because I had transport problems, or I have a problem that women in the sweet spot don't want to teach me or let me practice on the sweet spot. So I want to know if the learner had a problem that could be, normally short term. Now, also remember, if you are going to find a learner not yet competent, I don't think it's going to be happy with you. The learner will not be happy with you. And probably the learner is going to run to the SETA to complain about you. When the learner is not yet competent and he loses his job, and then people gets very anxious and desperate. They go to the SETA with a long story and think they're going to feel sorry for them and give them a certificate. It's not going to work. So the first typical reason when a learner goes to the SETA, the first common reason the learners always use to complain is they say, I had a problem and that assessor didn't want to listen to me. So there I have it, identify assessment and special needs. And if the learners say no, then I'm writing in there. I'm writing, what did the learner say? The learner confirm um, that he don't have any special needs. Okay, whatever he say, I'm going to do it. I can abbreviate it also, but at least 2 words or more. What type of evidence is required during the assessment? You can tell him, what you're planning, taking photos, or must he give you documents or project handings or whatever you want to collect from him. Identify the role players. Maybe there will be other people involved, if that's the case, or maybe a moderator will sit in, discuss it with him. Discuss assessment process and the assessment policy. Now, remember, unplanned, we already done the assessment policy, and we discussed there how many times he can be reassessed. So all those things there, you can just discuss again with them, from your plan, include it in the additional stuff. Identify required evidence. Again, any preparation or stuff that the learner must prepare and maybe bring to you. We said now this Friday, so when it comes to Friday stuff that you must bring with you, and before you can even start the assessment process. Number 6, discuss and agree on the assessment methods and instruments. Now, we already went through that in the plan. That is pack number 3, and we know in this assessment, and the next stage will be 3 types of an assessments. The first one is an observation. This specific assessment have 3. So every assessment is different. So you will have to go and look what type of assessment your when a training provider gives you the assessment guide, what type of instruments they have. This one, we have an observation. So the learner is going to sit typically on the sweet spot, and I'm going to look at the observe while she answers the telephone. The second one was an interview, get an office where I'm going to sit and ask the learner some questions, and she's going to answer me back. And then the third one is a written test. So I'll just discuss that also with the learner. There's number 6, the assessment method and the instrument. The instrument is the fancy word that we use for test paper, if you want to do that. Number 7, agree on the assessment plan and the schedule, when, what will happen. Number 8, discuss the appeals procedure. Again, there you can make up your own appeals procedure. Typically, when the learners is going to run to the SETA is going to say, okay, you weren't happy with this assessor, how she treated you. So why didn't you complain or fill in an appeal? And the learners will say, no, what apples must I peel? No, I don't know what you're talking about. So there we've got it there. Where can they get the documents? If they're not happy, how they must appeal. And there you can, as I say, you can come up with your own procedure or consult a training provider to find out their appeals procedure. Discuss the moderation procedure if any required. Now, if you will be moderated, the training provider will notify you. So sometimes a moderator will sit in, especially when you're a new assessor, the moderator will sit in to check you. If that's the case, explain to the learner again that the moderator will be present. Agree on the review and the feedback process. Again, we know that's the third one that the learners use with the SETA when they go and complain, and they say, listen, yeah, I've done my assessment, but that training providers never told me if I pass or, what did I do wrong. So we can tell them, listen, you will get feedback within, I don't know, same day or X amount of hours or days or 7 days. And if you don't get feedback, then you must contact the training provider. So if they say that and they go to the SETA say, did you go back to the training provider to say you didn't get feedback? No, then sorry, it's not that's not the assessor's thing. Okay, some signatures required. And there we've got typically also a copy of the unit standard. This actually unit standard that this assessment is based on, we always include a copy in the guide. And you can also go to the learner and just make sure, um, because sometimes a learner is on a learnership or qualification, and then he comes in on Friday. When he comes, he says, oh, I thought we're gonna assess the other program. So yeah, just make sure that we're all on the same page. There's a copy of the unit standard. We all agree what the assessment is going to be about. These are typical learner registration document, that we also need, because we need to register the learner with the SETA. Some process, some pre-check that you can also ask the learner to complete to make sure that he's read through it and understand everything. Typically, we're going to need a copy of his ID book. That's a fake ID that we made just for, for training purposes. And then also the learner agreement, the agreement between the learner that we need to sign before we can register him with the SETAs. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop now with the pre-meeting. Everyone is going to sign the documents, and then the learner is going to leave, and at least 24 hours later on, you can only then start with the actual assessment. So that's the pre-meeting, just to make sure me and the learner is on the same page. But if he comes on Friday and he comes unprepared, then I can take some action because he was warned. Now, the topic that everyone wants to know, yes, it's quite a long process. How can I handle the pre-meeting differently in the workplace? And I'm actually going to look at this here. You don't always physically have to meet with a learner. You just need to make sure or confirm that the learner agree that he knows what is required before he comes for an assessment. So in some cases, for some higher NQF levels, we give the learner the document similar to this. We email it to him or send it to him and say to him, completed, that you understand these things. Do you have special needs? No, fill in all the things, then email it to us, because I need to confirm that the learner understand it, and I can use that then as a pre-meeting. Otherwise, I can also have a group of learners in the same room and have a group meeting with them. So there's other ways of also handling the pre meeting, to make sure it's more cost effective.